What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining us on yet another episode for Walking Manifestator. I'm your host, Alexa Peña, and in this podcast, we are talking about everything that is going to help you awaken your highest self and embody the walking manifestator that you are. Now, in today's conversation, I really want to dive deep into the story we are constantly telling ourselves. I think that most of us can agree that we all have a story, right? We all have something that in our life played a factor in how we carry ourselves today, whether that was good or bad, whether it was your parents were there or was your parents weren't there, whether it was my friends were bullying me, quote unquote, not really friends, right? But a lot of things that I think personally we can all agree to the fundamentals of the fact that it has shaped us in one way or another. And the reality is that most people don't even realize that we are being told a story that we continue to repeat day by day by day, and it actually creates our reality. So I really want to share with you 3 key components that are going to help you better understand why it is that you should become aware of the story that you are telling yourself. Now, the first thing I want to dive deep into is going to be the fact that no matter where you are in your life, no matter what exactly you feel you've gone through, no matter how hard you think circumstances were, we need to learn to adopt the belief system that there is, again, and this is all based off your perspective, based off what you perceive to be true, but there is some good that can come from the worst of the situations. And I know that as you're hearing this, more than likely, depending on where you're at in your journey of healing, that might trigger you. That might make you feel like you don't know what I've been through. You don't know the stuff that have been said to me. You don't know how ugly people have been. And how could you sit here and say that this is something that it's just a story that I'm telling myself? And I know far too well why you're feeling that, because I used to be the same exact way. I used to think that, well, poor me, I didn't have a mom, I didn't have a dad. Poor me, we were living in a storage room. Poor me, we didn't have money. Poor me, I had to walk everywhere. Poor me, we had gone through situations where we didn't eat. Poor, poor, poor Alexa. And you can fill in the blank for whatever story you're telling yourself of poor me, but the reality is that now looking back at those situations, they actually made me stronger. I could have allowed those things to have kept me down and have kept me in this just negative vibration, which it did for a very long time. So I'm not sitting here and saying it's just like within a flip of a switch, right? But it was becoming aware of it. And gradually, as you were asking for more opportunities because you became aware of the things that were keeping you in a lower vibration, you now start working toward things that can actually help you grow. So when I talk about the narrative that you're telling yourself, it really is for it to make you think, for you to start analyzing, why do I keep telling myself this story? So I'm going to give you an example. I was on a flight to Miami not too long ago, and I was sitting next to a pilot. And the pilot and I were having a conversation. Obviously, he wasn't the one being the pilot on the plane, guys. So we're having a conversation, and I'm like fascinated by flying. For those of you that don't know, I will be getting my pilot's license just because I want to say I have it. Like if anything were to hit the fan, I want to be like, let's go. I know I'm a little crazy, but I find that fascinating. So when I was talking to him, I was like, so tell me a little bit more about like, what are some of the key components of like being a pilot? And he was telling me like, well, it's aviation, navigation, and communication. For those of you that did not know, now you know. So he was like sharing with me some insights. And as he was talking to me, I started feeling comfortable and I started asking him questions because I like to get people to start thinking. People that make me think, for me, is like so exciting because you're getting me out of my comfort zone. And that I invite all day. Even if it's going to make me a little bit uncomfortable, the fact that you make me think and put me on my toes, that to me is very stimulating. So as I'm having a conversation with him, I start now telling him like, so what do you think of your thoughts? Like, do you think that you are your thoughts? And like, you can tell his face like was like really trying to analyze like what I meant by that question. So I was like, do you understand what I'm asking? And then he's like, I think I do, but I don't think I really understand. And I was like, okay, well, do you believe that that little voice in your head is you? And then he was like, I don't really think in my head. And I laughed and I was like, what do you mean you don't really think in your head? He's like, no, I don't. And I was like, no, I think you do, but let's dig deeper there. I was like, so whenever you need to go and, choose what you're going to eat, do you just automatically grab whatever you're going to grab based off what you saw? Or do you think like, do I want salad or do I want a pizza? Or do you say it out loud? And then he like laughs and he's like, wow, I guess I do talk to myself internally. I had never really thought about it. And that right there was such an aha moment for me, because that is something that I had forgotten I used to do. Like, yes, I would think of things, but I wasn't really aware of those conversations. I wasn't really aware of the internal dialogue being carried within me. So when I talk about really understanding what is the story that you are constantly telling yourself, it's deeper than just, oh yeah, I'm having a conversation with my head and Alexa's telling me that I shouldn't have a conversation with my head in my head. No, it's the fact that what is that conversation? Because if you're constantly being stimulated by, let's say, negative things that are causing you to feel like if that is part of who you are because you're so accustomed to it. I'll give you another example. You sitting down with the boys or the girls, mainly the girls, but the boys do it too, and gossiping about other people. Is that stimulating to you? Because if that is, then that's what you've gotten accustomed to. Therefore, whenever you do anything other than that, you're going to feel really uncomfortable. Like you sit at the table with a friend that you always sit, and then you're talking about, hey, what are your life goals and what are you trying to build? That's going to get really boring to you because you're not used to that. So this is why it is so important to really understand what is the narrative that you are telling yourself in your head. And the story can really start changing as you become aware of it. So for the longest time, for me, it was, I can't be successful because I didn't have parents growing up. I can't be successful because I was taken from these opportunities. So for the longest time, that was my excuse to not move forward. That was my excuse to believe that nothing was working out for me. But then I changed the narrative. And when my little one came about, I really wanted to just become a better version of myself. And they usually say like kids will do that to you. But even before that, I was already catching myself not being really happy within the energy that I was around. And I don't know about you. I'm not sure where you're at in your journey. But if you're at any point where you feel like you're not happy, you feel like you're not fulfilled with life, you feel like you're burned out, and you feel like you're just literally like a zombie every single day, just like getting day by day and passing by and trying to get to the next day and looking forward to the weekend, you're not living your life with purpose. And that's why it's so important to change the narrative, because there's something internally that you have chosen to settle within. Because somebody at one point came and told you you're not good enough, therefore you believed that you shouldn't try any harder. You believe that why would you try and go and open up that salon? Why would you try and get that degree? Why would you try and do whatever it is that calls your attention? That is number one when it comes to the story that we're telling ourselves. Number two is going to be something that I have found very helpful, especially when dealing with negative people. So I'm not sure if this has happened to you, but I'm willing to bet it has. You've dealt with somebody, whether it was at the gas station, whether it was at the restaurant, your server, whether it was, especially at the DMV. But you've dealt with somebody at one point that just looked at you like they hated life. And instead of you allowing yourself to analyze the situation, maybe, just maybe, you actually engaged in that energy And what you probably did at that point is if somebody gave you attitude, you gave that attitude and that energy back. But what you're not realizing is what that actually does. It has a ripple effect. So what I've noticed is whenever I've been around people that just have that face, that they're just like not having a great day, I don't know what's going on with their life, I like to tell myself, I don't know what exactly they're going through. I don't understand the full story here. There's more that meets the eye. Therefore, in my perspective, I tell myself, I am going to show grace. I am going to be the person that this person might assume was going to be the exact same as all the others, but in turn was like, hey, how's your day going? And you make that conversation that for at that moment was like the worst day of their life. Now you genuinely complimented them on something that you genuinely liked. And I think that has such an impact on how your energy is going to elevate because you didn't allow yourself to get into this lower vibration, into this energy that was not conducive for you. Instead, you brought a situation that wasn't ideal and made the best of it. This is something that if you can start changing the narrative that you are constantly telling yourself, now allows you to also be willing to understand that that other person you're talking to, you really don't know what they're going through. Now, that does not mean that you're just going to allow people to step over you. And because I know a lot of the times people will be like, well, I'm not going to allow people to just give me attitude and me just sit there and smile. I'm not saying that because I do believe that you want to treat people the way that you want to be treated, right? However, practice giving grace. That's all I'm saying. I think that goes a further way than you sitting there and engaging with this person and going back and forth, just thinking like, I don't know what this person is going through. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if they're stressed out about maybe not being able to pay their mortgage. I'm not sure if they have their kids sick right now. I don't know. And I think that right there allows you the opportunity from the universe the next time that you're in that situation for somebody to show grace to you. And I'm telling you, it has happened. And as you practice this material more and more, being the art of awareness, just becoming aware of what it is you're telling yourself, you're like a magnet for the positive and the negative that is happening around you. And the last one I want to leave you with is going to be the root problem. So this really is something that, if you think about it, anything you're telling yourself, there's a reason why you're saying that to yourself. So I have started implementing this strategy that I have now really asked myself the why at least 5 times. So if for some reason you're in a situation where you're feeling very overwhelmed by, let's say, I don't know, let's use a simple example, the clothes that isn't put away yet. Well, maybe you ask yourself, why am I so bothered by it? And if you ask that question, maybe it leads to the next answer, which is, well, because I don't feel like I use my time wisely. Why do you feel like you're not using your time wisely? Well, because I feel like I was wasting my time watching Netflix, and now I'm upset about the fact that I didn't finish actually doing what I said I was going to do today. Why did you sit there and watch Netflix? Well, because I was trying to avoid the fact that I didn't have anything else to do. Do you see how this like why to the why to the why really yields, that sounded funny actually, why to the why to the why, really yields the overall understanding of what is a trigger behind it. You see, when somebody usually cuts you off, it's not that you're upset at the fact that they cut you off, you're more so upset at the fact that you feel like they disrespected you. So why do you feel disrespected? Oh, well, because maybe somebody at one point was actually doing something along those lines that, you felt that that person was actually doing it in an intentional way to disrespect you. Therefore, you felt the need to react. So now you're carrying that energy out to your vehicle and you're doing the same thing with that person that just, try to get in your lane. But instead you're like, no, I'm not going to let you get in my lane because I was here first and I'm not going to allow you to get into my energy. And we tell these stories, these elaborate stories in our head all the time. Think about it. As you're listening to this right now, you're playing out a story. And it's the monkey mind. Jay Shetty talks about it in his book, Thinking Like a Monk. And he talks about how we need to really train our mind to stay focused, to stay in the now. And the now, that's a whole other conversation, because I feel like we put energy into the things that are overall happening at this moment in time in the quantum field, and that gets into this whole other like conversation. But I feel personally, my own little concept here, and I mean, it's not just my concept here, but there's a lot of people that have actually studied this, but everything is constantly happening. Time is simply an illusion. It's not something that is happening like, oh, yesterday and tomorrow. It's like there's like different realities playing out at all times. And I know that for me, when I first heard that theory, I was like, what is this person on? But I'm telling you, everything that you perceive is what becomes your reality. And if you really start playing around with this concept, you're going to start figuring out why are you being triggered by certain situations, and instead just focus on how you continue to grow. How instead of this happened to me, that happened for me. How instead of I'm so bothered because this person didn't show up at the time that they needed to show up, and now I feel that they are insulting me. Hey, this person is here now and let's have a great time. So these concepts are going to help you to start really changing the story that you're constantly telling yourself. Now I want to read you this little quote that I wrote down here. It says, the final step out of pride is made through accountability and understanding. And I want to dissect that really quick, which is, no matter what you're going through, pride is something that is coming from the ego. And the ego could be your best friend or your worst enemy. You choose. It's there for a reason. It's there for us to, instead of ignoring it, for us to work with it, okay? And I believe that through taking accountability over the things that have happened in our life, we can really start going from a blame victim mentality to an accountability mentality, being, hey, everything that's happened in my life actually has taught me something. And even in the moments where I felt like everything was crumbling and I thought everything was happening in the worst possible light, everything worked out. So I invite you to really implement some of these techniques, because I'm telling you, these are fundamentals that are really going to help you start embracing a more conscious, a more evolved version of you. And these little stepping stones go hand in hand with a compound effect. The more you do one thing, that is going to actually lead to another possible, positive outcome, then you have another habit that you've created, and little by little, you become aware of the fact that your mentality has dramatically changed. And now, instead of you going and spreading negativity to the rest of your people, you're that person that now, like, in a weird way, I'm telling you, you stop really even getting along with the same people that you used to, because you've changed. You've grown. And some of those people are still not willing to grow, and that's okay. It's not your obligation. It's not your story. You worry about your story. Stop being the extra and start being the main character in your story. With that being said, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Walking Manifestator. I appreciate all of the support that we continue to receive as we continue to grow this channel. And with that being said, I highly encourage you, if you are some of the listeners listening, that if there's a particular subject that you want to talk about, send us a message to info@walkingmanifestator.com, or wherever it is that you're watching it. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave us a comment down below, and we'll be more than happy to make sure that we can talk about that on our next episode. So I'm sending you many blessings, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.